This is a planted question for people listening to the podcast, as you can tell, but
What hard-won lessons from diagnostic imaging still guide the way you architect AI-driven cardiology tools today?
it was all about how do we improve usability? How do we reduce the number of clicks? How do we reduce the cognitive load?
What clinical blind spots is HeartSciences attacking right now?
It's a good question. When you're talking about the blind spots, I think I'm going to start with a lot of those AI models can help detect things that humans cannot.
The whole workflow gets integrated around that particular model.
All the models are considered class 2 medical devices. So the models that are cleared in your region and you've licensed will be available on the system. You can pick whichever ones you'd like.
Regarding these models, is we run through an ECG through any of these models, or are they good at detecting any future heart condition, like predicting that, or it is just giving out the results from a current heart condition?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Again, it's a platform designed to host AI-ECG.
Hello everyone, I'm Nilesh Maheshwari, the show where we put the fast forward button on the healthcare innovation. And today we are zeroing in on the heart. Cardiovascular disease still claims one life every 34 seconds in the US, and yet 70% of the early cardiac changes go undetected until they become emergencies. So, today, my guest is someone who has spent nearly 2 decades turning diagnostic images into data driven decisions. Jason Domask is VP of Product and AI at HeartSciences, where he is steering AI-ECG platform designed to catch silent cardiac issues before they catch us. So, Jason, can you give a quick introduction about you and then we'll dive into?
Yeah, well, good morning, and thank you for having me today. So just quickly, I can talk about my background, and we'll go quick through this. But I have worked since about 2006 in the medical, so the diagnostic imaging space. I had worked for a company called Vital Images, which was acquired by Toshiba and then eventually Canon Medical. The software I worked on was called Vitria. So what that was a diagnostic imaging suite. It was used mostly by radiologists for post-processing different images. We had about 150 different applications in the suite for Vitria by the time I left. I also worked on the CT console as well as an automation platform, which was all about using AI to detect different things. On the CT console side, we use things like anatomical landmark detection. We leveraged AI to provide fully automatic scan planning. We also used what we called the Advanced Intelligent Clear IQ Engine, which was deep learning reconstruction techniques to reduce noise and improve image quality. On the automation platform side, when the projects I had worked on just prior to leaving Canon, worked on things like auto stroke solutions, so detecting large vessel inclusions, ICHs, generating CT perfusion maps, all of these things, pulmonary embolism detection, aortic dissections, using different convolutional neural networks. And what really I'd like to do when I joined the cardiology, so move from diagnostic imaging or diagnostic more on the radiology side over to the diagnostic cardiology side, was bring some of the key usability and what we've learned from maybe the practical applications of AI from diagnostic imaging, bringing that to cardiology or diagnostic cardiology as well. And I know I have a slideshow I'll go through if that's okay today, and we can talk through the slides, but we'll just kind of go through some of the background as well.
That's a kind of elaborate experience you have, and I think you have filed FDA submissions and shipped you are shipping a brand new production ready cardiology software in under a year's time, and this is not a small feat in a space where multi-year roadmaps are very prevalent. So it is kind of, and we would definitely like to unpack the playbook behind that speed, the pillars that keep it safe, and the real world feedback loops that keep it useful. So people here, buckle up. As always, expect practical tactics, zero hype, and plenty of caffeine level energy from Jason. You have been building software as a medical device since quite a long time, like over 2 decades you have been into this. So looking back, what hard won lessons from diagnostic imaging still guide the way you architect AI-driven cardiology tools today?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is putting the human side first, right? So a lot of the solutions at Canon, especially the next generation CT, is all about how do we improve usability? How do we reduce the number of clicks? How do we reduce the cognitive load? How do we make it a much easier workflow? And how do we bring automation into the picture in a meaningful way? Right. So I think that's the main thing that we've brought from diagnostic imaging into diagnostic cardiology. The solution I'm working on right now, it is called MildVista Insights. There's really two parts of it, and we'll kind of talk through some of the how the radiology experience has been applied to this software. And this is actually screenshots from the first version that we released in December. We're about 4 weeks out from releasing our next version for early adopters, which will have roughly additional 5 maybe customer sites coming on by the end of this year. Additional sites past that as well into next year. But just kind of giving the concept here, and I'll kind of come back to usability and kind of just the kind of ease of use and how is that important and why have we designed the solution this way. We've designed a 2-click solution, and we'll explain that a little bit. But we'll back up and just kind of explain what this solution does and some of the clinical benefits, if that's okay. So first of all, with MildVista Insights, and maybe before MildVista Insights, if you had an ECG reporting system or an ECG device, it was easy for people to detect maybe more basic things like heart rate issues. So bradycardia, where the heart's less than 60 beats, right? You can count the different squares and see that, or use traditional interpretive analysis that comes with your ECG device to see that. Or arrhythmias, for example, AFib. So when you see irregular rhythms or patterns, you can recognize it as a human when there's like not a distinct P wave, or if there's conduction issues like bundle branch blocks, so LBB or RBBs, you can kind of recognize the patterns like prolonged QRS with specific patterns. And humans are good at actually seeing this. But there are a lot of things that humans cannot see and cannot detect. We can't recognize the patterns, right? And that's where I think really AI comes into place. And some of the AI-ECG models that we've been working with partners to develop, and some of them are internally developed as well. We've been working to do that. But our AI-ECG models really go beyond, again, what humans can detect. For example, the first one that we're releasing here is the reduced injection model. So we're detecting reduced injection fraction when it's less than or equal to 40. We have another one, mitral valve regurgitation, pulmonary embolism detection, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, STEMI. We have a whole bunch of these different AI models that we're working on and collaborating with partners to build. And I'm not sure if you saw it this just today, actually, we had a press release about the aortic stenosis AI-ECG model that we've been working on. It finally received breakthrough device designation from the FDA.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so really good things that are coming. I'm not going to go too much into the specific models today. We're going to talk a little bit more about the platform that hosts the models. And that is really this MildVista Insights product that you're seeing screenshots of on the screen right now. In general, the company I work for is called HeartSciences. We do produce an AI-enabled 12-lead device. My colleague Aaron is responsible for that one. I'm completely responsible for this newer product line, which is called MildVista Insights. In both cases, we're all about producing lower cost solutions that can really provide earlier detection of heart diseases and also help to really more effectively refer people to the echo lab. Yeah. So what questions do you have? What I'll do is kind of talk through the MildVista Insights platform today a little bit, and talk through some of the usability enhancements and everything there. But what questions would you have about? We'll focus more on the cloud product that we have, again, the MildVista Insights. But what questions do you have about it?
As you mentioned that this product line which you are working on is from HeartScience. So what clinical blind spots is HeartScience attacking like right now, and why does closing those blind spots matters to both clinicians and CTOs and CIOs of the clinics?
Yeah, that's a good question. When you're talking about the blind spots, I think I'm going to start with a lot of those AI models can help detect things that humans cannot. What this is, and maybe I'll start with what it is before going specifically into some of the blind spots. Maybe talk through some of the problems that we solve with it. It is an ECG management system. So it is something that could maybe compete with like a GE Muse or some of the Baxter solutions out there. It is an AI ECG integration platform. So a lot of vendors are producing AI ECG models today, things that can detect, different conditions. But there's no real platform that's been designed to host these models and integrate into a clinical workflow. So I think some of the blind spots a lot of vendors are focused on just producing really strong AI, but they don't really focus on how do they integrate that AI into an existing workflow. And that's really what this is looking to do. How do we bring a workflow that's been optimized, but it's very, very familiar to a primary care or cardiology, or maybe even some of the researchers out there? How do we bring that kind of familiar workflow into the clinical setting so people are kind of used to it? How do we optimize it so reduce it from maybe like 7 or 8 clicks down to maybe 2 clicks, and then allow this workflow to host those AI models that a lot of other companies are developing in an intuitive way that makes sense from both an HIT perspective, so healthcare IT perspective, as well as a clinician's perspective. This system, as you're seeing here, it has a whole bunch of icons. These correspond to different AI-ECG models. You can get the results directly on the work list if you'd like. These AI models are both from partners that we're working with that are hosting their different AI-ECG models on top of this, as well as ones that we've developed as well.
From the user's point of view, it is like they can pick and choose any model which suits to their particular requirement, and then the whole workflow gets integrated around that particular model.
Yeah, good question. So all the models are considered class 2 medical devices. So the models that are cleared in your region and you've licensed will be available on the system. And you can pick whichever ones you would like. And you can pick then to run them per order or run them, on every single upload of the ECGs. Again, what we want to make sure is the models that you're installing in your kind of facility. So if you're a primary care facility, they're able to pick the ones that are important to you and that you have the right kind of clinical protocols to do the correct kind of follow up on. So there might be some facilities, like if you detect reduced injection fraction, could they actually do the referral to echo or not, right? If you can't, you probably don't want that model. In general, we're trying to really focus on, I'd say, putting the needs of people, so the patients and clinicians first, really trying to improve the user experience you get with different ECG systems, optimized for primary care, nurse practitioners, cardiologists, people that consume the reports as well, and trying to optimize that workflow for all cases. And then what models you pick, it is a la carte. You can decide which ones you'd like to run on top of this based on your clinical protocols and your needs.
One curious question, like for regarding these models, is we run through an ECG through any of these models, or are they good at detecting any future heart condition, like predicting that, or it is just giving out the results from a current heart condition?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Again, it's a platform designed to host AI-ECG. So some of the models that we have are really detecting existing. So we're using convolutional neural networks, so CNNs, in some cases image transforms to detect existing type conditions. But we're definitely looking at partners that are thinking about more predictive type models as well. So I'd say it's both is the answer. And again, the platform is really here to host the models, some that we've developed as HeartSciences. And if you're an AI-ECG developer, we'd actually love to talk to you and host your models here too. I think the human side of AI is something that we focused on a tremendous amount over anything else. And it is just kind of moving on a little bit on this one. It's a very, very simple two-step workflow. You have a work list and you have a viewer. And what we're trying to do is specifically reduce clinician burnout, reduce cognitive overload on kind of getting all this information thrown at you in a non-intuitive way, or having to log into all these different systems, and also for maybe speed of reads, right? How quickly can you really interpret an ECG? We showed the work list. I'll show the viewer here in just a second as well, just giving you an idea or preview. And again, this is our previous release from last December. But the whole thing is we really want to delight our users. We want to make their time kind of be freed up a little bit more, wanting them to spend less time reading the ECGs, giving them a lot of visual cues on what's going on, not just on the AI side, but also from the traditional side as well. So the work list kind of looks like this. And I know I'm moving forward a little bit, but we also provide a lot of different comparison views. Again, what we learned from radiology, one of your earlier kind of questions, like simple things, display protocols, how you want to display your waveforms to do longitudinal comparisons over time. And all these are fake patients that you're seeing out here. We use usually musicians' names in honor of some of our favorite musicians, but they'll go through different time points, both from an AI perspective. So you can see there's low ejection fraction not detected on this patient. That's one of the AI-ECG models that was licensed on this particular system. But you'd be able to see that progression of not just the AI, but the traditional waveform as well, allowing the humans to really detect issues, the AI to detect issues. You'll see all the traditional interpretive analysis from the ECG devices. All those results are shown on this as well. And then giving a lot of tools for explainability. So an enhanced caliper tool, enhanced filtering tools, those kind of things to help explain what the AI has seen to humans as well. So we spent a lot of time really trying to optimize this kind of workflow. This is the comparison view. There's a couple others, but it's really a two-step workflow. Going to the work list to the viewer, grouping ECG exams by patient, including things like these display layouts and protocols to really enable longitudinal comparisons, help disease really track that disease progression, right? All on a cloud native, more of a vendor neutral, so be able to handle the GE files, the Philips files, the Mortera, the Baxter, the Welch Allen, all these different vendors, all have their own formats. So translating those into kind of a common format, making it easier from interoperability perspective has been a big focus of this. So how can we really simplify the overall experience when reviewing ECGs is what we're trying to do, and also add more clinical benefit by bringing in some of the AI to the picture.
Market statistics says that CMS has spent around $13 billion dollars on CHF readmission last year. Fixing trials early on, does it change the math?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that change the math with this, including reimbursement for the AI-ECG. But yeah, if you can detect earlier, and this is a low-cost way, right? This is a earlier referral to echo is what this can do. A lower cost than an imaging exam. It's an easy way of having almost like a screen type software to get that patient into the echo lab, or if they need a CT or an MR or whatever else. But this is really designed to accelerate that and do more early detection. To your point.
While talking to I figured out that you have like a production ready system in 12 months, which is a light speed for a healthcare system to get developed. So can you walk us through the pillars that made this possible? Is it process, people, platform,
Yeah,
clinician?
absolutely. So this is a planted question for people listening to the podcast, as you can tell, but we're very, very passionate about this. So we have something we call the pillars of excellence on this project and within HeartSciences. And the most important thing is making sure the voice of the clinician, whether it be primary care, a cardiologist, a nurse practitioner, a technologist, people that are acquiring these different ECGs, people are producing the reports, people are consuming the reports, people are researching these reports. Like, we wanted to make sure that that voice was very, very clear and very much influencing what we've built. And I'll go through that a little bit more in detail in just a minute. But that's the main pillar, is the voice of the customer or voice of the clinician. Workflow and interoperability. So after you really understand the clinicians, like kind of their needs, how do you plug our system into a clinical workflow in a meaningful way? So how do we integrate with the existing systems that they use? How do we make sure we plug in a way that's not distracting from the way the people are used to working, right? We don't want to have them log into another system, yet another system that they have to learn. We want this to be plugged into their EHRs, plugged into their EMRs, plugged into their PACS workflows in a way that really makes sense. And really, we're working right now to assemble and kind of expand upon what we call the voice of HIT, or voice of healthcare IT. We've nicknamed it our hit squad. If people are interested, in August, we're going to have a workshop with some of the members that we've assembled to really get their opinions on how can we best integrate with the HRs and EMRs that people have in production, to make sure that this is integrating in an intuitive way, not just for clinicians, but also for healthcare IT. AI excellence is very, very important. I'll emphasize some of the issues that we've seen just briefly when looking at this slide, and we'll go more in detail. But making sure that the ground truth information is very, very solid, right? We've worked with a lot of data providers. We do an assessment of their ground truth, their echocardiograms that we typically use for ground truth. And we found in many cases there's insufficient overreads, or in some cases some of the measurements were estimates. Making sure that you actually have strong ground truth when you're doing your training, your testing and validation of your AI models is absolutely critical. And also knowing what kind of AI to use. Should you be using traditional AI, or maybe more foundational AI? Maybe things like your Chat GPTs or your Geminis versus traditional CNN. There's places for both, And I think it's very important to understand when to use what kind of AI in different situations. Partnerships, we'll talk through this as well. And there's definitely opportunities for people listening here, whether you be on the clinical side or you be on the vendor side to partner with us, whether it be hosting AI models, whether it being providing data to us and our partners for development of AI. There's a lot of different opportunities. Or if you'd like to give us some advice from a clinical perspective, if you read ECGs and you want to see something a little bit more modern and advise us on how can we make this a better experience for you, we're definitely interested in talking to you. And of course, we have an agile process which allows us to really go fast. And I think the agile process just kind of reiterates some of the values you're seeing on here. Starting with how do you organize your business a little bit, right? We have two main value streams: our 12 lead AI enabled device and our cloud, which I lead. And then going from there, and how do you really make sure that you're involving your clinicians and getting those kind of feedback loops established. So this is just kind of an overview of the kind of things that guide the way we develop our software and our hardware here at HeartSciences, with the voice of the clinician being the absolute most important. And I'll dig into each of these because I think it's important to talk through the details. And I know other vendors really struggle with maybe involving the clinician or maybe their target users when they're developing software in healthcare. That is the most critical thing. Without that, you may not produce a solution that actually meets those clinical needs. And you need to look at kind of what kinds of clinicians are going to interact with it as well. In our case, we have a lot of different types of people that produce reports, people that consume reports, people that do research, people that have to integrate the thing. Um, you know, we consider also people that are dealing with the financial aspects, more of the CMOs, the CFOs, those kind of folks, the CIOs, if you want. We were considering all these different types of people that interact with the system. In the end, you can have the best AI in the world, but if it's not really made for human consumption and plugging into really the healthcare system, it's not going to take you very far.
This actually goes with our thought process as well. In many of our product development, like in the healthcare, we have integrated nurse, clinicians, people who are involved in the process early on in the Scrum cycle, so that the review process is trimmed down, and they give early feedback on the software development during the development, so that the software is to the mark and right first time.
Yeah, that's critical. And I don't think it's critical that you get it right in the first time, to be honest, right? We actually have a two-step process when we're taking our software out to clinicians. The first process is we show them what we are about to build. So we usually show a visual design, whether it be in Figma or some other kind of visual representation about what we're going to do. But we make sure we design it in such a way that we can talk through what we're about to do. What does our design look like, right? And it may take us a sprint or two sprints or three sprints in some cases to develop things. We come back to those clinicians, and then we usually involve a larger group as well. We ask, did you mean this? What do you think about this, right? So we show them what we've built, and we get a different additional feedback. And usually there are tweaks. There's usually things like, well, we haven't thought about that when doing the design, right? So it's not about getting it right the first time. I think it is really about being open to iteration. And I think you do have to have a little bit of discipline on the way you iterate as well. There's going to be some feature requests. A lot of these features, they come and you show people and they're thrilled by it, right? And there's some things that are kind of critical to do now, and there's some things that might have to be put into that later bucket that might go to another phase of development. For us, we've looked at primary care as our first phase, cardiology is the second phase. So making sure the people that produce the reports were the first kind of persona that we focused on. People that consume the reports, the second persona. And then we're looking at HIT, research, all these different personas. If you get a research feature during the cardiology phase, you may say, hey, listen, on a roadmap, it's this time period, and be able to move it there, and be disciplined to have that focus on of really delivering with excellence before we move on and change focus. How do you don't have some of those cognitive load problems within your development team? Like, you have to make sure you have strong focus as well. But yeah,
Sure.
I think it's very perfect with your process. Just for context for people on the call, I started at HeartSciences on February 5th, 2024. By March 14th, we had our first voice of clinician call. And really the main goal of this, and I know that you've touched on this as well, is to establish healthy feedback loops and really to understand the clinical workflows. We already talked, it's a two-step process. So give us feedback about what we're going to do. Give us a feedback about what we've done, right? And that's kind of interesting. On this slide here, this is actually the very, very first VOC call that we had. That's why I put it up here. Just kind of showing, the start of this. And what happens is, a lot of these people were very, very influential. They helped us to get more and more people onto our VOC group. Eventually, I think by the end of 2024, we're up to like just under 40 people advising us from more of a primary care and a more of a cardiology perspective. And each one of these people have kind of different perspectives, whether they're producing the reports or consuming the reports, whatever it is. If you're a leader in healthcare too, I'd really highly recommend, right? So we assembled this kind of group very early on. So 1 month after I started, the main focus was really assembling this kind of voice of clinician group. By I think it was April, so I think it was April 3rd, attending clinical and scientific conferences that are places where the clinicians go, not just the vendors, but what are the small groups that people go to learn more about the clinical. In this case, I went to a conference called ISCI. I actually broke my foot at ISCI playing basketball with these guys. But meeting, some of the most respected voices within cardiology at that show, meeting some of the younger cardiologists, in some cases even students that are going to become cardiologists or researchers or whatever else, expanding the group by getting out there and talking with these people and getting their opinions and advice as well. Um, just kind of going through the story here in the slide and just kind of showing some of the pictures because I think it's a amazing journey. But by May, I think it was around May 10th or 11th or something like that, we had our very first UX design call, right? So we assembled these groups. We got all the kind of advice about what their needs are. We definitely looked at what the industry, where it was. So looking at all the different solutions that are out there, kind of forming our ideas. So using primary market research where you're talking to people, secondary market research where you're really looking at literature and conferences and kind of seeing where the state of the art is within electrocardiograms, and then starting to make some informed decisions on what we need to build. May was our first UX call, first US design call. We had a contract designer who works with other medical devices, helping to do UX design. And he was shocked. He's actually puzzled, and he's sitting on this picture, I think around here, if I can remember right, kind of with his hand on his face going, this is the first time I was ever invited to actually talk with customers in the UX design phase, the early phases. But we had so many questions. As we did our market research, we found that some vendors use dots, some vendors use like solid lines with kind of more bold lines. Some people have kind of smaller dots, like all these different ways of rendering a waveform. What's the quote unquote right way of doing it? What do people like? And actually, we had a universal answer to that across the EU, the US, the UK, all these different regions. It was something that was kind of a phenomenal thing. Like, we really like it this way, right? And people all kind of agreed on the one rendering because it was the easiest one for measurements and visualization of the actual traces. Or, hey, do you like light themes or dark themes, right? Do you do some reads of ECG and echo, or do you just do reads of ECG, right? If you're just doing ECG in the front office, this bright theme is probably what you want. If you're doing reads of maybe echocardiograms with electrocardiograms, maybe you do it in a dark room. And we kind of universally we want the dark theme out of this, right? We want to make sure that we're optimized so we can do reads of echoes and ECGs. And it was very interesting to get all this kind of feedback from the VOCs before we wrote a single line of code, right? This is all design phase stuff. I'd say it's very, very important. Again, how do you build the right solution is a key question that we have. Your development team has to focus on how do you build the solution right. I think before you start development, you have to really validate a lot of these early assumptions and start asking some of the hard, maybe naive questions. In my case, I'm from, again, more the diagnostic imaging background, building software for diagnostic imaging. Diagnostic cardiology is different. We can benefit from a lot of the concepts from diagnostic imaging, which is further along from a technology perspective, but we need to figure out how do we practically apply them. And honestly, I'd say the design, we spent about 6 months really designing the solution the right way. I know we had 39 different voice of clinician sessions during 2024. In some cases, we'd have 5 or 6 clinicians on a single call. I'm not sure how many we had in 2025 so far, but just last week, I had 7 VOC calls, just kind of giving perspective, right? Getting advice on some of the items we did with our latest release, making sure we built the caliper tool right, making sure we built some of our filter capabilities right. What do people like? What do they don't like? What suggestions for further improvements would they have as well that we can do now and later as well? So it's been a really good journey, just in evolving, especially in branching out and having fun. I mean, you can't sit in these calls and kind of be like stiff and robotic, right? We get into really interesting discussions, even like the healthcare IT squad that we came up from the acronym. We had some colleagues and advisors, I'd say, in Denmark. They're like, we think you should call it the squad of HIT because of the acronym, right? The instead of HIT squad, HITS, maybe you call it the squad of HIT, and I guess the people on the call here can figure out what that acronym would be. We didn't go with it because we don't think a lot of people are going to sign up for the I'll just say the shit squad, but we would love to see people if they would like to advise us on more of an HIT role. We are inviting people actively to join these and have some fun with us and kind of tell us how it should be, not how it is, but how they'd like to see it.
I think this is an excellent example of involving the end user early on in the journey so that they are advising, they are creating the whole user experience. And then the technology comes into play. And that actually brings in a very robust product which is adopted by the end user, the clinicians in this case, very fast.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We have a couple different kind of downstream programs, right? We're pre-revenue on this whole project I'm working on. We're still getting that feedback. All this is about getting healthy feedback loops established and understanding those clinical workflows. How do you plug in? But a lot of the people that have advised us as part of the voice of clinician efforts, they are our early adopters, right? They want to go in and try this immediately in production. And what's nice is when you ask, how do we go so fast? We separated out what was the class 2 part of our device, all the cardiovascular machine learning, from the actual platform. The platform, we just got to the regulatory review of the current version, the version we're going to release here in about 4 weeks, yesterday. And it's considered an MDDS, so a medical device data system. It's just showing results of the different class 2 AI-ECG models after they have clearance. Right now, they're disabled until they do have clearance. As well as results of interpretive analysis, like the G Marquette algorithm or the Philips DXL or the Mortera Veritas. It shows those results in this system. So it is, again, a medical device data system where you can store, transfer from the device to the EHR, EMR, and help to format it in such a way that makes more sense, giving a lot of visual cues and just improvements from a usability perspective and user experience perspective compared to some of the traditional ECG management systems that are on the market today.
Let's now switch to AI excellence. You coined this phrase AI excellence. So can you unpack for us from data governance to model expandability, explainability? What checkpoints turn a clever algorithm into a clinical asset?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, from an explainability perspective, and I'll touch on that first, it does mean giving tools that can challenge the results of your AI and your traditional algorithms, frankly, as well. So, if you have AI, for example, if you have AI based interpretive analysis, which I know is out there now, or if you have traditional one, if you have a Glasgow, for example, really, how do you challenge those results? Glasgow or the G Marquette or any of these interpretive analysis algorithms out there aren't always the best performing, right? Just from the VOC group, their gut feeling is 60 to 70% of the time they're correct. In other cases, they want to challenge maybe the interval measurements or maybe some of the different diagnostic statements that come with these interpretive analysis. So providing easy tools for like basically explainability, whether it be AI explainability or traditional algorithm explainability, are very important. And then how you design those tools with the right kind of input, as we talked about before, is critical. So in our case, we have very simple measurement tools, which allow physicians to update any measurements that would come from AI or from kind of traditional algorithms within the system. So kind of amplitude type measurements or time measurements, wherever it might be. In the case of our system, if you're in diagnostic imaging, you might have other kind of tools like ruler measurements or Cobb angle tools, those kind of things. But having those tools that you can go back and maybe confirm yourself as much as possible the results of any AI or traditional algorithms that have been run are very important. So to answer your question about explainability, that's one of the things that we're doing. We're trying to make it the best user experience from an explainability perspective as we possibly can. So really focusing on how do we keep your eyes centered and not jumping around the screen, right? So if you look at maybe traditional filter tools, your eyes are going everywhere to enable them. We've made ours very, very simple. So when you're looking at a waveform, you never lose context. You never have to stop looking at the interval that you're measuring. The tools pop up right there in an intuitive place that kind of reduces the amount of strain and cognitive load that you have when interpreting ECGs. Also, just visual interpretation, like are things good or bad, right? We found from a lot of the more, I say, less experienced users, they don't know what a good heart rate is, right? When is it bradycardia? They don't know, right? It's not something that if someone does an ECG once a week, they may not know. They may depend on somebody who does the report afterwards know. So we provide very, very simple visual icons, like kind of what we call a stoplight system in our software to provide visual cues. Hey, look at this. This is why the report has turned quote unquote red, right? Whether it be AI findings or if it's human findings as well. So those kind of things, and we're not showing that as part of our interface today, as part of that quick demo of the version we released last year. But those kind of things are definitely very, very important, giving that kind of visual guidance as part of explainability and tools for people to challenge not just AI, but traditional interpretive analysis as well. Um, with AI too, I think it's very important as we're talking about AI excellence. They're really looking at. I think there's really two kinds of AI, and you really have to know when to use each. And we've tried both as HeartSciences, right? But a lot of the AI that we're doing for this project is what I would call traditional AI. And I know this is a picture, an actual MR image of a brain, right? And I know that the left brain is not truly analytical, right? This is kind of a old wise tale or something. I know from functional MRI kind of what the regions of the brain do, but I do think from an AI perspective, this is a good analogy. When do you use traditional AI? When is it really the right kind of tool? Is something that I think people really need to think through before maybe they just use maybe like a generative AI or a foundational model, which might be more creative and have more maybe interpolation, adding data, inferring. In some cases, it may not be correct. Our very early experiments with maybe foundational models, and this was happening mostly last year, and now we're seeing a lot of literature coming out, is saying that a lot of the foundational models on the market today weren't really trained to really recognize ST elevation properly, or things that are specific to ECG. I think that's very good. It has been trained pretty good on radiology. Again, cardiology kind of lags. There's not really I would recommend if we have clinical folks and listening to today, don't just trust Chat GPT, right? Don't just trust Gemini when you're doing a read of a waveform. It's not necessarily trained to interpret and understand everything that a traditional interpretive analysis algorithm, like a GE Marquette or the Philips DXL or Veritas from Mortera or Glasgow and those other devices. It doesn't have that training yet, and it can produce wrong results that are very convincing. So you have to be careful, and you can go look at the literature yourself where the performance of reading ECGs from these kind of foundational models, it's just not there yet. And I think it may get there, but it's just not the right tool yet for that. So please be careful. Um, yeah, so we're using traditional AI. What has been used for since 2008. I think that's when you had things like the rapid AI coming to market. If you guys can remember that, it's when they started developing kind of these CNNs for analyzing images, the X-rays, MRIs, the CTs, to detect things like tumors or fractures or large vessel inclusion or aortic dissections, all those kind of things, right? That's been there since about 2008. Again, I think Stanford with rapid AI, I think it was Dr. Elberts and Dr. Rowland that were looking at it. By 2017, the traditional AI was, I would say, very mature. That's when we had cardio AI, giving the first FDA-approved cloud-based, reduced injection fraction measurement using MRIs. That's what we're doing as our first model as well. For now, just ECGs detecting the same thing we could do in 2017. Now with simply lower cost exam, ECG versus MRI. We had by 2017, I can remember being in it actually, the first RSNA machine learning showcase in Chicago. And I can remember like around 2018, I had solutions like AI Doc with their brain solution getting FDA clearance. So we've been doing this for longer than a decade at this point, right? So traditional CNNs for really evaluating images That's been there for quite some time, and we know how to do that quite well right now. So with a lot of the AI we're using a lot of CNNs, a lot of I'd say image transforms, those kind of things, where we take waveform images
Mhm.
and we feed them into, again, convolutional neural networks, produce the probabilities. That's a lot of what the models that we're hosting today. And if you're a partner, if you're somebody that wants to partner with us, if you have these kind of models, again, our platform has been designed to run these models, and not just the ones we're developing. Most of the models, and this is completely public information, are developed from Mount Sinai, and they're our first partner that's hosting on our platform. Um, some of the challenges that we've seen, and I know this is kind of going to the AI excellence question you had before, is really about how do we make sure that the data that we're using for the training, the testing, the validation of our models, right? So if we have a label that we apply to these different probabilities and results, and we're comparing it to ground truth, how do we make sure that that is actually correct? And what we're finding is, if it's garbage in, it's garbage out for your training. Same with your validation and your testing. If you get the wrong results, you want to make sure that you have, first of all, large scale, diverse, I would say, testing, tuning, validation, all these kind of data sets. And you need to make sure that your ground truth is validated. So either overreads, so second reads by peers, or we like using tools like US2AI, which is cleared, or Echo Prime, or Precision LV for really kind of doing some automation of some of the measurement validation. And it's very, very important that you don't just trust the data you're getting. We're finding there's a lot of DICOM data out there, by the way. We're not finding as much ECG data. DICOM, there is some ECG, but it's not really what most people use. Most people use proprietary formats from GE, Philips, Siemens, whatever else, Mortera. We spend a lot of time translating and figuring out how to translate those formats. And then when we found that we've kind of moved on from data providers in general, and we're working a lot direct with facilities now. Partners on our platform, we would like to make our platform available, right? We have an AI ECG SDK that allows you to easily integrate, as well as some of the data that we've used for the testing, tuning, and the training, the validation of our models. We'd love to make that available for others, because we know that it is a challenge for people to have access to. So if you're developing AI-ECG, we'd love to talk to you and put you in contact with a lot of the facilities we're working with directly, because they'd like to be able to supply data as well and improve some of the clinical indications that we can produce with these models going forward. But yeah, kind of gives you an idea about our process, and just kind of a warning to make sure that you are using high quality data. So Nilesh, I'm going to ask you a question here. I talk too much. I know you asked me a couple questions, and I didn't prepare you for this one. But can you spot the difference in this picture? If you can't spot the difference, can you tell me, or can you spot the problem in this picture?
All of them look pretty much same.
Yeah. Right. If you can't spot the difference right now, you can't necessarily identify the problem right now. So for people in Europe, can you spot Wally or maybe Waldo in this picture? If you're in the US, it's Waldo. In Europe, it's Wally, the guy with the red cap and the stripes and all those kind of different things. All
So
right.
you tell me what is.
Yeah, I'll tell you. That is the problem. There wasn't a difference. So the previous slide was really an example of bias in healthcare AI. I'd recommend you make sure that you're using representative training data sets, so you don't have algorithms that are biased, right? So this goes back to, in order to develop these models, the biggest challenge we have seen is having access to quality. So again, making sure your ground truth is validated, diverse, making sure that your data set's actually representing the people that you're going to use it with, large
Mhm.
scale, right? So making sure you have several thousand, in some cases, several million data sets for your training, your testing, and your validation. So the whole point of the last one is, there was no difference. And that is, I think, a problem still with at least diagnostic imaging as well as diagnostic cardiology. You need to make sure you have the right diversity. And there's Wally right there, or for people in the US, Waldo as well. So even Waldo's included in our training set here.
Quite interesting. So, like, trust is the currency of AI in medicine, and so how do you convince a skeptical cardiologist that your model is reliable and equitable? Like, are you publishing a nutrition label for each model?
Yeah, so we're very transparent on all the models. And again, the models are disabled in the version we're taking to early adopters here in about 4 weeks, just because they don't have clearance. But for each model, we have a marketplace approach where you can see all the different, specifications for it. So the sentence spec and just all the performance of every single model is very, very transparent. Again, giving the tools for people to question and challenge the results of traditional and AI interpretive analysis. Those things are very, very important. So explainability, transparency. Um, we're trying to be extremely transparent and extremely explainable with the tools that we provide for our clinicians to use. And we're not demoing those tools today. At some point, maybe in the future here, after we go from the early adopter phase more to that kind of general availability phase, we'll have to do a demo of the software for your listeners as well.
You have been talking to the viewers about all your journey, but for hospitals or AI scientists who are listening, where can they plug into your journey? What
Yeah, it's
feedback would move the needle most right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a couple different collaboration opportunities that we have out there. Number one, if you're doing data science, so if you'd like to provide data for the training, testing, tuning of our AI-ECG models, we have several hospital systems around the world. A lot of them came from our VOC effort, where they're advising us more on how to build the software. A lot of these different kind of VOC folks have transitioned into also providing data for training, testing, and tuning. But if you have data, high quality data on site that's ECG data, so we're not necessarily just looking for DICOM data, but high quality could be GE or Philips or Mortera data. We'd love to talk to you. Um, if you guys want to use some of those different models for validating ground truth, we can definitely help you out. We do have partners that also can help with curation of data if it's something you don't know how to start. We do have specific partners that just do that on our behalf and are excellent at it. So if you have data that you'd like to provide, we'd love to talk to you. If you're, maybe a research type hospital, you've produced some AI-ECG models and you'd like to actually take these to market so they can provide actual clinical value, and you don't want to spend the time and money developing your own ECG management system or platform to host these, we can also integrate your models on our platform. Um, we do prefer that the partners that we work with do get their own regulatory clearance, but we are helping some partners get regulatory clearance for those models as well. So we do have both kind of ways of working available. Voice clinician we talked about a lot, but this is a group that's been assembled. It's becoming quite large. It's actually the most fun I have in this whole company is working with clinicians and getting their feedback. And I'm most happy when I'm actually sharing the software with people and understanding what we can do to improve. Right, we put our egos away. We take the feedback and we address it. It usually takes about 2 weeks for us to address whatever feedback people have. But if there's people that's interested, they're kind of fed up with the way you do reads in ECG today, and you want to provide us some feedback, like, hey, I've got this problem with this takes so much time during my workflow, whatever it might be. We'd love to get your feedback and include you as part of these VOC calls. It's a very light touch. We do rotate the VOC people, so you're not on our schedule. I think a lot of agile processes do things wrong, where you say, okay, every 2 weeks we're going to demo to you. We ask the opposite. When are you available for a demo? And it's very, very light touch points. And we have people drive the software as well. We actually have people try it and give us feedback versus it's just always showing you, right? I think we've mentioned this before, but we are building this what we call hit squad, so HIT squad, really tailored to healthcare IT, trying to make it easier to integrate our software into your existing EHR, EMR. We're an EMR-driven workflow, making sure we get interoperability right. So in some cases, there's HL7, some cases there's FHIR, but we think that the most effective way is usually using some of the proprietary APIs from like the Epics or the system ones or the Cerners or whatever else are out there, that can actually do a deeper integration of the clinical results, as well as maybe launching into our solution with patient context, those kind of things. We'd love to have that kind of advice from anybody that's interested. And again, to us, the clinical workflow integration, really integrating deeply into that clinical workflow is one of the most important things. Um, we also have early adopter programs. And I'll be honest, we are probably going to have to close out the sign up sheet for this soon, because we are going to probably have more early adopters than we can handle for maybe the next year. So we have a lot of people are being very interested in this program, but we will be giving our platform, so basically free access to the platform without the AI for it's roughly 6 months or 180 days after we get the clearance on our AI-ECG models, wherever is permittable in your region. If we're in the US, there's definitely potential revenue afterwards. We do have CMS approved facility fees. It's $128 right now for some of the Cat 3 codes for the AICG that we'll host on our platform. So people want a preview. A lot of times it's larger healthcare systems. Sometimes it's primary care type locations that have approached us. But if you guys want a preview, we have some of these early adopters. They're if they have multiple sites, they'll take it to one of their sites to get their site using it and their kind of internal feedback before they go large with it. Those are kind of great opportunities, and we'd love to have your feedback. All this in the end is about how do we get the right kind of feedback to make sure that what we are building is correct for not only the clinician but for HIT and everybody else involved.
Where is the right place to reach out to you for a conversation?
Yeah, so if people would like to, I'll share my email. I'll skip this next slide here because I think we talked through a lot of it. But people can contact me on LinkedIn. So my name is Jason Domask. You can scan this QR code over here, or if you'd like to contact me directly at work, my email is up there as well. So jason.domask@heartsciences.com.
So, Jason, this was a very, very good conversation with you, and every one of us has learned, including me, and there's a lot of insight you have given. So, my key takeaways from the conversation are like one is include and integrate clinicians early on in your process so that you create the solution for them with them, and so that they can trust. And as you mentioned, trust in AI is very important. So when they are part of the system and they are part of the process, there is inherent trust. So and with AI, you need a lot of trust and credibility for the medical system to adopt that. So these are the two important takeaways I feel that are prominent in building any healthcare solution. Your experience and the insight which you have given today is of immense immense value for every one of us. And thank you, Jason, for your time. And thank you, everyone, for your time.